Welcome to Iraqi Dinar News, where you receive real and authentic updates about the Iraqi dinar. In today's update, we're taking a closer look at a topic that continues to generate a lot of discussion among Iraqi dinar followers and currency watchers worldwide. And that is the concept often referred to as deleting the zeros. This phrase has been widely circulated for years in discussions about Iraq's monetary policy. Yet it is frequently misunderstood, misinterpreted, and sometimes even exaggerated beyond what economic fundamentals support. So today, we're going to break this down carefully, separate fact from speculation, and explain what this concept actually means for Iraq's economy and for those tracking the IQD. Let's begin with the core idea. When policymakers in Iraq talk about deleting the zeros, they are not referring to magically increasing the value of the currency in the way many assume. Instead, this phrase refers to a redenomination process. In simple terms, redenomination means restructuring the currency by removing zeros from the nominal value of banknotes. For example, a 25,000 dinar note would be replaced with a 25 dinar note. The purchasing power remains the same, only the face value is adjusted to simplify transactions and accounting. This is a concept that has been implemented by multiple countries in the past, particularly those that have experienced periods of inflation or currency devaluation. The purpose is largely practical. High denomination notes can make everyday transactions cumbersome, complicate accounting systems, and reduce confidence in the currency's usability. By reducing the number of zeros, governments aim to modernize the monetary system, improve efficiency, and signal a transition toward greater economic stability. Now, one of the key points raised in the discussion you've provided is the idea that deleting the zeros does not mean anything regarding the exchange rate. From a purely technical standpoint, that statement is broadly accurate. A redenomination by itself does not inherently change the real value of a currency relative to other currencies. If Iraq were to redenominate its currency, the exchange rate would adjust proportionally. In other words, the nominal figures would change, but the underlying economic value would remain consistent. However, where things become more complex is in the interpretation of how such a policy might interact with broader economic reforms. Redenomination is often implemented alongside efforts to stabilize inflation, strengthen fiscal discipline, and modernize the banking sector. So while the act itself does not directly increase value, it can be part of a larger framework aimed at improving confidence in the currency over time. Another point mentioned is the idea that two versions of the currency could coexist during a transition period. This is actually a realistic feature of many redenomination processes. In several historical examples, governments have allowed both the old and new currencies to circulate simultaneously for a limited time. This helps ensure a smooth transition, giving citizens and businesses time to exchange old notes for new ones without disrupting economic activity. During such a coexistence period, both sets of banknotes are typically assigned equivalent value according to the redenomination ratio. For example, if one new dinar equals 1,000 old dinars, then a 25 equals 0 old dinar note would be equivalent to a 25 new dinar note. Importantly, this equivalence is purely mathematical and does not imply a sudden increase in wealth or purchasing power. Now, the example given in the paragraph suggests a scenario where the exchange rate shifts to a level such as $3 per dinar, and then applies that rate to both old and new notes. This is where it's important to exercise caution and maintain a grounded perspective. While exchange rate adjustments are possible in any economy, they are driven by a complex set of factors, including foreign reserves, oil revenues, fiscal policy, inflation control, and overall economic productivity. Iraq's economy is heavily dependent on oil exports, and its currency policy is closely managed by its central banking system. Any significant change in the exchange rate would require strong macroeconomic fundamentals, sustained stability, and confidence from international markets. It would not simply occur as a direct result of redenomination. In fact, most redenomination cases around the world have not been accompanied by dramatic increases in exchange rate value. Instead, they are typically neutral in terms of real value and are designed to simplify the monetary system rather than redefine it. Let's also address the idea of a time-limited exchange window, such as a 90-day period for turning in old notes. While transition deadlines are common in redenomination processes, they are usually structured in phases. Governments often provide extended periods, sometimes months or even years, during which old currency can be exchanged at banks or central institutions. This is done to avoid financial loss for citizens and to ensure that the transition is orderly and inclusive. A short window like 90 days might be used for certain stages of circulation, such as removing old notes from active use, but full redemption periods are typically longer. Again, the goal is stability, not disruption. From a short-term perspective, if Iraq were to move forward with a redenomination plan, the immediate effects would likely include logistical adjustments within the banking system, public education campaigns, and coordination with businesses to update pricing and accounting systems. There could also be temporary confusion among the public, which is why clear communication from authorities would be essential. In the longer term, a successful redenomination could contribute to improved confidence in the currency, particularly if it is accompanied by broader economic reforms. These might include strengthening the banking sector, increasing transparency, diversifying the economy beyond oil, and maintaining fiscal discipline. Over time, these factors could support a more stable and resilient currency environment. For Iraqi dinar followers, it's important to understand that redenomination is not a shortcut to rapid wealth creation. It is a technical monetary policy tool aimed at improving the functionality of the currency. Any changes in exchange rate value would depend on underlying economic performance, not simply on the removal of zeros from banknotes. This distinction is crucial because it helps set realistic expectations and prevents misunderstandings that can lead to poor financial decisions. Key markets are influenced by real economic indicators, and sustainable value growth comes from productivity, stability, and investor confidence. At the same time, it's worth noting that Iraq has been working on various economic reforms in recent years. These include efforts to modernize its financial system, improve electronic payment infrastructure, and enhance regulatory frameworks. While progress has been gradual, these developments indicate a broader commitment to strengthening the country's economic foundation. If redenomination were to be implemented as part of this broader strategy, it would likely be one piece of a larger puzzle rather than a standalone event. Observers should therefore pay attention to the overall direction of economic policy rather than focusing on a single concept in isolation. In conclusion, the idea of deleting the zeros is best understood as a redenomination process aimed at simplifying Iraq's currency system. It does not, by itself, change the real value of the dinar or guarantee any specific exchange rate outcome. The coexistence of old and new currencies during a transition period is a practical measure, not an indication of sudden wealth creation. And while timelines for exchanging old notes may be set, they are typically designed to ensure a smooth and fair transition for all participants in the economy. As always, staying informed with accurate and balanced information is key. Avoid relying on assumptions or exaggerated claims, and focus instead on verified economic developments and policy announcements. If you found this analysis helpful and want to continue receiving responsible and factual updates on the Iraqi dinar and Iraq's economy, make sure to subscribe to the channel and like the video. And remember, this content is provided for informational purposes only and should not be considered financial advice.